Fighting lore is weird. Longtime fans will know that it's been spread across outdated wiki pages, dev streams, and lost Twitter threads. Right now, trying to understand fighting lore is like being handed 3 different puzzles and being told all the pieces go together, while the devs hang the remaining pieces over your head like a dog. But some friends and I decided to get together and hunt down everything we could find and put it all in this one video. So before we throw you headfirst into the shit show, I'll have everyone introduce themselves. Say hi, everyone.
Hey, hello guys, JayMajor here, but I'm normally called Major, mostly since we already have a J. I'm an artist and I hyperfixate on a lot of things, like pressure, fighting, decaying winter, and so on. I'll be info dumping on Zuka, Playground, and Splintered Skies. I don't really have any socials that I'm active on too often, other than my private Discord life, but feel free to pop into my rare Twitch streams at TheJayMajor. Otherwise, feel free to leave a comment or question on this video.
Hello all, I'm FriskTheDrago, but I usually go by Frisk. I'm an artist that loves drawing my sillies and loves gaming as well. I'll be going over Infernals, Banhammer, Vinestaff, Windforce, Thieveston, Darkage Clan, Beehive, Grav and Warp, and Dusakar. All my socials are FriskPlush everywhere, with the exception of Twitter, which is FriskPlush1.
Hey, what's going on? DoubleK is the name, but you can call me K for short. I'll be taking care of fighters such as Skateboard, Katana, Shuriken, and Coil, as well as individuals such as Traffic Cone and Darkheart, and any other individual that I'm reading over. However, I will be going over certain things that the editor, Jay, has been writing down for us. Thank you, Jay, for that, just to ease off the burden. My socials are DoubleK808 on Twitch and DoubleK on YouTube. Go check them out.
Hello, the name's MesmerTheGreat, the local strategist, gambler, and blind marksman of the group. I was the first one to introduce everyone to Fighting, and it snowballed into this whole thing. I guess we're doing lore videos now.
Hello everyone, I'm Robomister, or just Robo if you don't have much time. I'll be going over Medkit and Hyperlaser in this video. When I'm not playing a variety of video games like RPGs or fighting games, I'm usually listening to music like jazz, progressive rock, or synthwave, that kind of thing. I intend to start streaming soon, so if you want to watch me, you can just go to twitch.tv/realrobomeister. I'll be streaming Final Fantasy XIV here in the future.
Hello, I'm Avi. I'm helping out with this project, but I'm not too into fighting at the moment. Had a bit of a falling out with the game. I'm not too well versed, so a lot of the stuff that you guys are looking at I am also kinda new to. Yeah.
And I'm Jay, here to pick up the slack these freaks leave behind. I'm an amateur artist and VTuber who's fallen into the flavor of autism known as fighting like the rest of these people. I also like Splatoon and will be making comparisons between it and fighting, all in a positive light of course. And, without further ado, we present to you the only fighting lore video you'll ever need. Welcome to the first part of the video, where we cover everything that we know in-game before the new Crossroads update is even out. As of writing this, the Death in the Family comic has about 209 pages, so if we don't mention anything that is in that comic after the update, that's why, and we apologize in advance for that. Now to start things off, we're going to be talking about Infernals and their biology, at least what we know so far. Take it away, Frisk.
Alright, getting into things, what exactly are Infernals? Infernals are a species similar to humans that are spawned from spawn points, or as they're also called, spawn shrines, which is what I will be calling them. Spawning with a random gear, which normally comes from the actual Roblox catalog, but it can be made up. The only gears that can't spawn, to my knowledge, are any wing gears, any of the Spoth swords, any brand gears, and vehicle gears. Spawn shrines are these large beacons of light that are in the 4 regions, with each region handling them in their own way, but they're commonly known for being sacred grounds in all of them. As mentioned before, Infernals spawn from these shrines and are considered 2 things, a natural spawn and an unnatural spawn. Naturally spawned Infernals are just when they're made at random, while unnatural spawn Infernals are when the shrine is manipulated by either of the Spoth or 2 or more Infernals sacrificing part of their gear's power, and any Infernals spawned this way will still be random and won't look like any of their parents. Any gear an Infernal spawns with is random, and only one gear can exist at a time, but if they die, they do go back to the pool for the shrine to spawn again. And gears that are similar can exist. We're going to take the blue hyper laser and red hyper laser for an example. Those support gears are rare, and healing gears are even more rare than that, which makes them more sought out. Okay, that was already a lot on its own, so let's move on to how they look. While Infernals are similar to humans, they're very different to how humans look, being completely hairless, with the exception of Infernals that have animal gears, who will also sometimes have animal traits related to their gear as well, a set of horns, which are usually 2, but they can have more, or even have a unihorn. These horns can also have abnormal traits. The only one we currently know is their horns can cover their eyes. They can even have naturally dual-colored horns. These horns turn gray with old age, and can have painted patterns on their horns, which can mean different things depending on the region that we don't really fully know yet. Infernals need a constant input and output of energy, which if they output a lot of energy, it can cause their horns to glow. They have a wide variety of skin tones too, most commonly being shades of gray, and they can even have vitiligo. I hope you all like hearing me yap because we still have more. Infernals are a relatively violent race, but that doesn't mean they can't be violent. It's just the large majority of them are. They're also a completely genderless race, having no biological sex or reproductive organs, which means they can present themselves however they'd like and have preferred pronouns. But for clarity though, we'll be using the official pronouns listed on the official wiki. With Infernals being as violent as they are, it's safe to say any romantic relationships are not too common, but it's still possible, just very rare. They often naturally form large social groups though. Getting into their gears, while they have no concept of gender, they do view their gears as an extension of their identity, and can be summoned and desummoned at will. Their personalities are heavily influenced by their gear, often following a career path that fits their gear as well, and can even have their gear modified as well. It's also important to note that gears grow with the Infernal. An example is Banhammer's hammer wasn't as big as it is now, and one of my own examples is my own fighting OC and her gear. And a small thing before I'm finally done, they do sometimes celebrate holidays like we do, but they're called different things. Birthdays are called Spawn Days, and things like Christmas and Halloween are called Fightmas and Fright Night.
Do also know that these characters right here are all people of color. In the past, all characters used to be white, but as the game grew, the devs decided to change some to have more variety and representation. We may use outdated art or renders to get a point across, but we'll add a little disclaimer about it for clarity. Now that you know what normal Infernals are like, it's time to get a little spiritual with the Sloth deities. Loosely inspired by the old Roblox game Sword Fight on the Heights 4, the swords, or just the deities as they're called in-game, are 7 powerful deity Infernals. What sets them apart from regular Infernals is the fact that they and their descendants have wings of some kind, bleed ichor, and have indefinite lifespans, though they aren't invincible. All the swords are biologically related to each other, though their personal relationships between one another are complicated. The swords can also spawn children as stated before, but still suffer the loss of energy a regular Infernal does, but because they have so much power, it doesn't affect them as much. As said before, their descendants also have wings and indefinite lifespans, I believe. Banhammer, Dom, Valk, and Sword are all related to the deities in some way. Sword is a special case that we don't know right now. The swords were all created by a higher power who did later die according to the wiki. Who this is isn't stated, but it's not Telemon, as Roblox myths, admins, and etc. aren't canon. Their original purpose is considered obsolete in the eyes of such as Illumina, and the general population of the Inferno don't think fondly of the deities right now. Some going as far as to consider them false gods, but more on that later. Moving on to probably one of the most important events in the game so far, the Scorch. The Scorch is an event that took place on August 25th at 2:35 p.m., 10 years before the time of the game, where, for unknown reasons, Firebrand burned down a large city in Lost Temple, setting fire to everything and everyone in and around it. The flames still linger to this day, and will continue to do so while Firebrand is still alive. After the event, some Infernals left the land, traveling to other regions to find refuge, while others remained in Lost Temple, splitting into two major factions, the Redcliffe Wranglers and the Church of the True Eye. We'll get into each of these in more detail later. This event was first hinted at in Ghostery Spawn Day Q&A, but wasn't fully revealed until Death in the Family came out. Moving on to more world building, the world of the Inferno is split into 4 major regions, which are Blackrock, Playground, Thieves' Den, and Lost Temple. Note that when we say regions, we mean these 4 regions. And when we say faction, we mean the kind of factions within said regions. It was a little confusing talking about which was which for a while, so there's some clarification for you.
Blackrock. Blackrock is one of the main 4 regions in Phighting. As a cold, de-isolated wasteland, it is the smallest region of the 4. It has the largest mountain range in the Inferno, which makes it almost impossible for anyone to get in or out. Blackrock is also home to trees called Crimson Pine, which has bright red leaves and sap that stain the surrounding snow. These trees help protect what little plants and animals are in the region. The largest mountain in the region is called Mount Azure-Raph, outside of Death Speaker's range. Yes, these are as scary as they sound because Azure-Raph has animals that seem to be highly mutated, as well as the area being known to have paranormal activity. Many people who try investigating these anomalies ended up freezing to death. Blackrock does have 4 seasons, but they consist of winter, which is squared, less winter, and hey, it's kinda decent, but it's still winter! The actual names of these are Dark Loom, New Loom, High Loom, and Low Loom, with Loom being light. Dark Loom is the coldest season, where sun almost never rises. This is the coldest season of the year and most dangerous where plant life cannot grow at all. New Loom is marked by the sun's faint re-arrival. At the time of regrowth where the cold temperatures began to rise ever so slightly, many of the plants and animals re-emerged into the region during this time too. High Loom is when the sun almost never sets. This is the time where Blackrock's days aren't deathly cold and quite possibly enjoyable, if you can enjoy Blackrock. Though, for unknown reasons, the sun doesn't rise enough to melt any snow in the region. Low Loom is the season of preparation. This is when the sun slowly slips away for months once again. During this time, Infernals will prepare for the next big freeze, securing what they can to survive. Most of Blackrock is unpopulated, possibly due to the temperatures, because something tells me it's hard to survive even when the temperatures wants you dead. Unsurprisingly, the main cause of death in Blackrock isn't violence, but hypothermia. Most Infernals living in Blackrock live in the central kingdom called Centura, which is divided into 7 sectors. Most of the population of Blackrock is made up of biograss, mostly for military purposes and other mundane tasks. Despite the harsh environments, Blackrock finds itself prosperous in both economical and technological ways. The Coldbox administration is the leading and only at the moment faction in Blackrock. Each of the 7 districts is led by a representative of the administration. The Coldbox carefully watches everyone that lives in the city for their safety, and probably surveillance. Snow steel, which can only be found in Death Speaker's range, is very abundant and responsible for powering the homes of the city. On the coastal side, however, is Noxite, an elemental absorbing material that is used in housing and even weapons. Blackrock even has one of the most aggressive education systems in the Inferno. Blackrock residents that are in the education system are usually called Infernal's greatest minds. Infernals that spawn in Blackrock are almost immediately put to work in jobs based on their gears. They are taught loyalty to Blackrock at a young age and tend to be very patriotic, and are also taught not to leave or speak outside against the Coldbox unless they wish to be labeled as a traitor.
Thieves' Den itself is a lush and tropical region, home to many jungles and mountains and various clans, though the only clan we know of, at least before New Crossroads, is Darkage Clan. Thieves' Den is also known for its infernal eating flora and vast foliage, but Darkage Clan is the current ruling faction of Thieves' Den. Darkage Clan members are trained to be warriors as new spawn, and also accept the capable warriors from other regions into their ranks, as seen with Katana. They have little tolerance for what diverges from their norm, as observed by their banishment of Bindstaff for her mutation, which they deem as a curse. They are also currently in an uneasy reliance with the Redcliffe Wranglers, supporting them in their war against the Church of the True Eye for control over their Lost Temple spawn.
Lost Temple is a hot, dry desert that was once home to a large, bustling city with thousands of inhabitants. As mentioned before, 10 years before the game takes place, the city was burnt in the scorch, leaving the survivors divided. Some left while others stayed, splitting the 2 major factions. the Red Cliff Wranglers, and the Church of the True Eye. Lost Temple as a whole is unbearably hot, especially to outsiders. Fashion is varied, but ponchos, scarves, bandanas, and cowboy hats are very common, and those that live in the desert usually live in tents. Wouldn't guess why. The Red Cliff Wranglers are a small, resistant-type group of survivors from the Scorch, led by Grappling Hook. Why does he sound familiar? They were first introduced in the Death in the Family comic, where they helped Sword find Mekit, at least so far. They're known for using Ossiferages. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I have no idea what the hell that is.
Ossifrage.
Or giant vultures for transportation, and are currently fighting the Church for control over their region's spawn. On the other side, we have the Church of the True Eye. They're a radical religious cult formed by Father Overseer, shortly after the Scorch, who promise salvation, and other mumbo-jumbo cult leaders usually say. They worship an unknown, and probably fake, deity, and consider everyone in the church with them as family. Almost all members wear a formal uniform in the mainly teal with common accents of gold, white, or a darker teal. The thing all members take part in, though, is the ritualistic removal of one of their eyes. While we don't know why they do this, it's a common theory that's related to either Overseer or their deity.
Playground is not what you think it is. When I first thought of playground, I thought it meant one giant literal playground, but nope, it's very much the opposite of what you'd expect a place called playground to be. It's a vast city filled with skate parks, tight alleyways that you probably get shanked in, and most buildings are pretty tall, typically multiple stories high. There's two main locations known as of right now: Crater Dust, the previous image I showed you from in-game, and Splintered Skies, also known as Windforce's home. I'll be talking about Splintered Skies later. A fun little tidbit before we begin: there's canonical doves in Playground called Love Doves. They're a soft pastel pink with a vibrant pink accent, and their legs are a soft pastel yellow that blends in well with the pink. Typically, the vibrant pink accent is most prevalent with a heart in the middle of their chests. The three main variants are Messenger Love Dove, Hardtail Love Dove, and Curly Love Dove. My personal favorite is the curly one. So cute! Playground often looks like it's half under construction, with cranes and things around ready to lift heavy materials for the construction workers, as seen in this image, with the big crane front and center. Ha, you can even see a couple having an argument. Speaking of arguments, the Infernals that inhabit this beautifully architectured place are very aggressive, and are nowhere near like the other factions. They are often getting into fights, and the ones living under Splintered Skies consider themselves factionless. The main cast of Infernals that inhabit Playground are Coil, Skateboard, and the side characters are MXBot, Paint Bucket, Rainbow, Shotgun, Sparkles, and Spray Paint. Certain Infernals have departed from Playground and or its factions, that being Boombox, Rocket, Traffic, and Umbrella. So far, there's not a lot of lore on Splintered Skies. Most of it is gatekept behind the Crossroads update, but we do have some available info for now. Splintered Skies is currently known as Windforce's domain, having been a chunk of land that she herself had taken forcefully out of Playground's lands, and it now hovers over this new city of Crater Dust's capital. Windforce rules over her domain and controls who stays and who doesn't. If she has an issue with new spawn, thanks to her islands having one of the spawn locations, she will casually chuck them off the islands, without hesitation might I add. This is part of the Skateboard and Boombox's stories, but I'm sure that'll be touched on more by K&J. Due to Windforce having a tendency to just chuck new spawns off a floating island, many Infernals that live in Playground that were thrown off have come to resent Windforce on her domain, mostly due to the majority of the new spawns that get chucked off and end up, well, not alive. Yeah, lore isn't as lighthearted as most would think this game is. So far, the only image we have of Splintered Skies is this one, so it's safe to assume that the life of these Infernals are very luxurious and luscious, although the overwhelming presence that Windforce could just yeet you off the island is ever present. Most of the buildings may be made of expensive materials based on this image, such as marble, limestone, etc., and such are more prone to feeling like royalty's grounds than anything. Which, seeing that statue, makes me think Windforce has a bigger ego than she lets on.
Finally, to end it all off, we have Crossroads, the place we're all familiar with. The current build of Crossroads is not what it canonically looks like, if it wasn't obvious, so I won't be going over on how it looks. Crossroads and the region it leads to is actually inspired by the old Roblox game with the same name, which has the same locations. In lore, it's a massive city where Infernals that consider themselves factionless live. It's crowded and split into 3 layers. The upper layer is where the Flipside Tower is, and most of the shops are. The second layer is more residential area, the third being more like the slums. Note when I say layers, I really mean rings, but they're officially called layers, so we're sticking with it. Crossroads was created by Firebrand to give Infernals a place to go to start a new life. But since his absence, there's currently a tournament to see who will be the next king of Crossroads.
Now it's time to get into what you probably came here for. The characters, baby! Starting us off is Sword. Sword is a melee fighter you start the tutorial with. He's a jack of all trades melee who's easy to learn but hard to master, especially with his passive building up to power up your next ability, essentially giving him 2 different movesets. He was naturally spawned in Lost Temple before the Scorch, and it's assumed that Venomshank almost immediately took him to Crossroads. How or why this is unknown at this time. He was raised very sheltered, unaware of most major events of the Inferno like the Scorch, at least until he saw the ruins himself in the comic. Sword never really talked to many Infernals outside of Rocket and Medkit, but even then, that was very recent in his life. Sword is also somehow related to the Swords by blood, though how he is currently unknown, but he himself is not a deity or demi-deity. So I guess that kinda makes him the first fighter to be in the box. Anyway, Sword is a kind-hearted yet naive Infernal, which is definitely not the norm for this world. When he has his heart set on something, he will do anything to achieve it, as long as it doesn't go against his moral code, which apparently breaking into apartments isn't on that list. As said before, he's Venomshank's pupil, best friends with Rocket, and sees Medkit as a brother. And, fun fact, Sword's iconic helmet and cape were gifts from Venomshank. He loves them so much that he'll only take them off when he's sleeping. That's cute.
Skateboard is one of the 5 melee fighters in the game, and while he's not as tanky as some of the fighters such as Banhammer and Katana, nor as skilled as Biograph and Sword, Skateboard excels as a hit-and-run type of playstyle, able to move faster than any other fighter in the game. He's known to be laid back, but also known to be easily restless and playful, wanting to do anything that's fun-related. Despite this, he values family and loved ones more than anything, and is willing to put everything that he's got, including his life, for them. Skateboard was naturally spawned into Splinter Sky's territory, where he soon met Boombox, who later became his only friend as a new spawn. However, unlike Boombox, Skateboard wasn't accepted into Windforce's kingdom, and thus later exiled, thrown off of a floating island towards Crater Dust capital. Boombox followed after, and the two landed, becoming the best of friends in the process. However, this developed a mutual fear of heights due to Windforce's exile. Skateboard now resides in Crater Dust, and spends a majority of his days looking out for Infernals around him, often rescuing them from the collapsing buildings due to the perilous architect of the city they live in. Several of these rescued Infernals have gone to become Skateboard's chosen family who he lives with. Despite these Infernals looking up to Skateboard, he doesn't consider himself much of a leader, but strives to make Crater Dust and Playground a safer place for his fellow Infernals to live in. Although Skateboard lives within the region of Playground, he considers himself to be factionless. He's close friends with Coil and friends with Slingshot. Going over some fun facts about Skateboard, the Infernals that go on to be his chosen family is referred to them as the Skate Fam, which I thought was wholesome as hell. Another fun fact is that Coil, his close friend, is hiding out with him due to Blackrock. More on that later, nerds. And out of every fighter, Skateboard is known to be the worst player in chess. Must have lost some brain cells when ramming into people.
Biograph, the expendable glass cannon, the only non-sentient fighter in the fighting cast. Teased on May 16, 2022 and released on August 26, 2022, version 030, Model Zeta is the default playable Biograph equipped with artificial gears, dual blades, range slashes, 2 dashes, echo execution, and overdrive. Manufactured by Subspace Team Mind under BlackRock Core Blocks administration. Zeta Biograph models are foot soldiers that lack any emotions and empathy towards any other Infernals, but are built with special artificial intelligence that learn and mimics behaviors of real Infernals to adapt for better hunting and eliminating their targets.
Katana is one of the first of the 2 tanks in the game so far. Attacking enemies adds up to 5 marks on whoever they hit, granting extra damage and shield when the 5th one activates. He has a wall of energy to protect from front range attacks and a grapple hook that drags enemy towards him. He was unnaturally spawned in Lost Temple to 2 caretakers who raised him alongside a sibling. After the 2 lost their parents during the Scorch, they joined the Church of the True Eye, which at the time was newly formed. The 2 proven to be extremely loyal to the family, working under Father Overseer himself. However, after an incident, Katana was disgraced by the father and the rest of the church. He fled to Thieves' Den, leaving his sibling behind. He was taken in by Darkage clan, where he has been ever since. Since then, Katana's life goal is to cleanse the Inferno of any and all corruption, which in his eyes is related to the church. Though like many who survived the Scorch, he despises the Swords, who he believes failed him and the whole Inferno. He currently lives in Crossroads with the same apartment block as Slingshot, Shuriken, and Vinestaff. He also was friends with Scythe when he was in the church, and recently has gotten to know Hyperlaser. Katana's personality is cold, mysterious, He normally keeps to himself and overly dedicates his mission to cleansing corruption in the Inferno. He values it above anything else, going as far to hone his skills, both literally and figuratively, traveling the various regions to improve his abilities and broaden his horizon. Will he ever be successful? Only time will tell, I guess.
Banhammer, the tyrannical warden himself. He's one of the currently 15 fighters we have in the game, and he's currently one of the 2 tanks gameplay-wise. He wears a heavy set of armor with a purple blindfold covering his eyes, and personality-wise he can easily be described as egotistical and extroverted, just loving to show off to everyone just how superior his abilities are compared to other Infernals. Banhammer is the warden of the Bandlands, the whole area being surrounded in lava, and there's even a big statue of himself right in the middle of it. He's very much a mama's boy. Being the child of Windforce, they have a very positive relationship with each other, but the same can't be said for literally everyone else. He doesn't really have any friends outside of Firebrand's unnamed child, and the only really notable relationships he has is with Scythe and Broker, who he's actively pursuing both, and even has a one-sided rivalry with Scythe. Overall, despite how he comes off, he does want to make Crossroads a safer place.
Rocket is the first ranged fighter on our list. As the name states, he uses a rocket launcher to provide long-range, heavy-hitting shots with AoE damage. In lore, he's very hot-headed, loud, and confrontational. Though despite his personality, he's very loyal to those he's close with and a very hard worker. He was spawned in Playground and lived there for most of his early life, but was forced to leave after an unknown incident, possibly with his gear, resulted in him losing his right arm and left leg. While leaving Playground, he ran into Zuka, who he grew very fond of, and eventually became Rocket's caretaker/guardian figure. Zuka then brought Rocket to Crossroads, where he's lived ever since, eventually meeting Swords and even Medkit through him, with Medkit creating Rocket's prosthetic limbs. These days, he works in Zuka's shop, where the two create and provide artificial gears, as well as general handyman services. Rocket does know Broker, who provides materials for said gears, but doesn't like him very much, but Broker loves messing with him. Fun fact, Rocket has met Venomshake a few times in his early life with Zuka, but is very wary of him, possibly due to his history with Windforce and Playground. Slingshot is another ranged fighter with high mobility and good for chip damage. He's very much a perfectionist, wanting the best for himself and his work, especially in his baking. He very often pushes himself past the limits and has little to no tolerance for bullshit, which makes him come across as blunt and unkind. Despite his outward attitude, he loves his family and softens up around them, trying to find time at work to spend time with them. There was a time when people thought Slingshot spawned in Playground, and I have no idea where that came from, so to set the record straight, Thieves' Den is where he spawned, where he worked along Shuriken as Dark Age warriors. Over time, the two became very close, eventually seeing each other as siblings. It was only somewhat recently that Slingshot moved from Dark Age to Crossroads for a better life with Shuri and Vine. He now runs his own bakery, Thieves' Rest, in the second layer of Crossroads, hoping to one day move it up to the first layer. He's made friends with Skateboard, Boombox by association, Coil, who loves to rage bait him much to his annoyance, and is neighbors with Katana. Slingshot and the others like leaving little gifts of baked goods outside Katana's store to show their appreciation for him. And while Katana seems to be annoyed by this, he does still eat them.
Hyper Laser is the longest range fighter in the game at the moment, possessing high burst damage and taking on Fighting's sniper role. His headshots deal more damage to enemies, and his M2 is capable of piercing through walls. Every third shot he fires, as well as his grenade, applies the wiring effect to the target, allowing him to deal more damage to anyone afflicted on the next shot. For mobility, his grenade additionally grants himself and allies a speed boost, and he also has a slide move to get out of tight spots easily. His finisher is a one-shot kill that can pierce through targets, allowing him to wipe out a handful of enemies all at once if they aren't careful. Hyper Laser was naturally spawned into Blackrock, where he was quickly taken into the military and trained for a variety of mercenary jobs. At some point in his life, Hyper Laser was involved in an incident that left his entire body burned, leaving him with scars and his horns left as nothing but stubs and leaving him legally blind. Thankfully, his helmet designed by Subspace gives him augmented vision, perfect for the job. He works for multiple contractors, mainly Subspace, and is one of the few remaining living Blackrock soldiers. When he's not working, he lives in District 4 of Blackrock with his pet cat Princess, who he found abandoned in Crossroads. He's very quiet and speaks formally, but is often curious about the inner workings of core blocks. When he does speak, he comes across as very intimidating, but he's got a soft spot for cats. He's also recently become close friends with Katana, often going drinking together with him.
Shuriken is one of the ranged fighters who was unnaturally spawned in the Thieves' Den, immediately after his older sister, Vinestaff. Shuriken was taken in and accepted by Dark Age clan, without hesitation of course. However, Bindstaff was separated and banished by the clan due to the curse she was spawned with. Shuriken was an extremely skilled warrior, going on to be one of the greatest in the clan, and it's here where he met Slingshot, and the two became extremely close, regarding to each other as siblings. The two would often go out into the night and meet up with Bindstaff in the forest, though it was forbidden for them to do so. Eventually, the three decided to leave Steve's Den to live in Crossroads, which was ultimately the safest place for Shuriken's siblings. Despite this, Shuriken did not take well with the city life, and found his life without purpose. He adopted a vigilante persona as Silver Shadow to pursue a greater ambition, where he now fights crime and keeps the streets of Crossroads safe at night. While Shuriken's siblings aren't aware of this ultra ego, and none the wiser when he shows up to his day job at Slingshot's Cafe, the Thief's Rest, he works as a waiter, but struggles with the exhaustion due to his vigilante work, and oftentimes falls asleep in the middle of the day. Although he cares greatly for his siblings, he mostly keeps to himself and tries not to worry them with what's going on in his life. Despite everything, he longs for one day to be reunited with his clan. Shuriken lives in the same apartment block with Katana and is his neighbor. The three always leaves gifts for their neighbor. Unlike his siblings, however, Katana along with Banhammer and the Broker are the only Infernals that know about the Silver Shadow, but they don't know that it's Shuriken. Which is an interesting take because the siblings don't know his alter ego, while the three interesting Infernos do know about Silver Shadow, but don't know it's their sibling.
Scythe is a really cool fighter that's classified as ranged, but she's more of a hybrid between melee and ranged, which I find really cool. I'm not biased, shut up. In her melee mode, she swings her weapon and does more damage when at a bit of a range, right at the tip of the blade. Her Q sends her high in the air and fires a projectile, costing 50 ammo to cast it again each time. Her E is a dash that can also be held, costing 50 ammo each time it's used, ending in a spinning slash. Her melee finisher turns her invisible for 15 whole seconds. Whoever you look at will become your target, and the next time you use your M1, you'll teleport to them and deal massive damage, even killing if the enemy is low enough. Her ranged mode is self-explanatory. M1 is a rifle, E is a shotgun, Q is a charging sniper shot, and her finisher is just Reaper from Overwatch. Having two movesets like this makes Scythe hard to master, but definitely worth it. She even has a target mechanic where a random enemy that's alive will be selected. Shooting them for the first time will do more damage, and attacks will generate more ammo than you would get passively. So you're encouraged but not required to attack your target. That was a lot of yapping about her gameplay. I bet you can't tell who my main is. As for her lore and personality, Scythe was spawned in Lost Temple, where she worked as a vulture wrangler alongside her partner at the time, Grappling Hook. Big shock in the community when this was revealed on Twitter. During the Scorch, Scythe lost her right arm, possibly from fiery debris landing on her or something. She made it out alive, but left her partner to join the Church of the True Eye. Why she chose this over her partner isn't known at the time, but it's saddening either way. She became very loyal to the church, willing to do almost anything to protect and serve them, working as a kind of mob enforcer. Being a mob enforcer means taking out anyone that speaks out against the church and the Father's mission, whatever that may be. Despite this, she has internal conflicting feelings about the Father and what he stands for, but this is the only home she has for now, so she doesn't really have much of a choice. When Scythe met Medkit, he made the prosthetic arm we see in-game, which is powered by his energy crystals. He also modified her gear upon request to add the rifle mode, which is the alias she goes by in public. The scope on her right eye also helps with her depth perception after sacrificing her left one to the church. Overall, Scythe is a charismatic killer led by a desire for vengeance. She'll stop at nothing to be rid of the pain she felt in the Scorch, but is still close to those in the church that she calls family.
Medkit is the first support in the lineup. He's a nice balance between ranged attack and healing, being able to apply direct healing with his gun, yeah, that checks out, as well as fanning the hammer of his gun for burst healing or finishing off someone at low HP. He's also capable of warping to nearby allies with an explosion, throwing a small AoE healing and status cleansing crystal, and his perfectly balanced finisher if he stays alive by the time it finishes. A large AoE heal and revive for all allies. Landing headshots on enemies will do more damage than a body shot, as well as cast a small heal on either yourself or a nearby ally, and landing headshots on allies will heal more than a body shot. Medkit was a naturally spawned in Blackrock to two unknown caretakers, and was immediately taken in by the Corblocks administration since his gear gave him the ability to heal, a rarity among Infernals. He worked as a scientist for Subspace, specifically in engineering and chemistry to further Corblocks' research, where he developed the first instance of energy crystals, one of which is theorized to be the crystal in between his horns. Medkit never got along with Subspace, probably due to his ego, but then one day, the incident happened. It's not specified what exactly happened, but the two fought and left the scene injured, with Medkit losing his left eye permanently. After the altercation, he fled Blackrock and went to Crossroads, where we can see him healing people who were injured during Windforce's confrontation with Venomshank. Not long after, however, he was picked up by the newly formed Church of the True Eye, which offered him protection from core blocks in exchange for his healing potential. He suffers from severe PTSD, paranoia, and constant night terrors due to his time at Blackrock, and is a very flat individual, coming across as blunt and uncaring. Despite this, he still managed to make friends with Sword and Rocket by association. He works beneath Scythe, his boss, and alongside Broker, much to his dismay. What awaits Medkit in the future of Death in the Family? Only time will tell.
Boombox is probably the sweetest Infernal in this game next to Sword. He is a support fighter who helps his teammates with buffs and has music-based abilities. Who would have thought? Boombox was spawned in Playground and, like most, was in Splintered Skies, providing Windforce with his supporting abilities. As a new spawn, Boombox made friends with Skateboard, as mentioned before, even becoming his best friend. But when Skateboard was exiled from Splintered Skies, Boombox didn't hesitate. He jumped off the floating island to follow him. He gave up his position just to make sure his friend wouldn't be alone, which is kind of admirable. Boombox is actually a talented EDM artist. In Playground, he's pretty popular, but in Crossroads, he's much more underground. His music is a core function of his gear, so he's kind of always playing something, which unfortunately leads to people like Banhammer and Medkit telling him to shut up, or calling his music annoying. Boombox is incredibly kind and selfless, sometimes to a fault. He constantly puts himself before others and will help anyone he can, even if it means getting taken advantage of. He struggles a lot with self-worth and self-respect, valuing others much more than himself. He downplays his own successes and often blames himself when things go wrong. He even changes or tones down his music just to make other people comfortable. Credits to Codacore for this theory, but this might also tie into his character theme, Sonorous Refrain, which you've been listening in the background. Sonorous means a deep, resonating sound, very fitting for him, but refrain can mean to repeat or to hold yourself back, and the second meaning feels more intentional. Boombox has a tendency to quiet himself, his music, his personality, and his need, just so he doesn't inconvenience anyone else. He's talented, loyal, and genuinely one of the most caring characters in the game, but he doesn't really see that about himself. As a rabid Boombox fan, I hope we get to see more of him in the future, especially in the new Crossroads update and whenever he gets his own comic, because the team did confirm that they were going to make a comic for at least every fighter. I'm willing to wait years for Boombox's comic, don't worry. Anyway, let's move on to the next fighter.
You ever just know a fucker that's really annoying? You really want to get rid of him, but you just can't because he's unfortunately useful. Yeah, so does most of the fighting cast. So, Subspace has been mentioned a lot. Who the fuck is he? Well, let's say right now. In-game, he's a support that specializes in area denial with his trip mines that, when triggered, applied poison damage and vulnerability. In case you are not aware, vulnerability increases damage. Some people don't seem aware of that. He can also cause enemies to float for a brief second with his M2, recasting them to slam them to the ground, doing a little bit of damage and throwing them off. He has a large AoE cloud that also applies poison to whoever's in it, and a mist form which turns him invisible for a few seconds, allowing for quick escapes, and leaves a trail that, when run into, can also damage. His finisher, essentially, is a black hole. Quite literally. Pulling all enemies in within his radius, dealing massive poison damage to everyone and stunning them for a bit. Subspace was naturally spawned in Blackrock, where he was taken care of by many members of the Core Block's administration, becoming an accomplished scientist in robotics engineering and organic chemistry, formerly alongside Medkit. He's very egotistical and sadistic and will do just about anything to achieve his goals, seeing his co-workers as expendables. He even prefers to work with his own creations over living infernals. Talk about antisocial. After the incident between him and Medkit though, Subspace was left with an unknown disease simply called the rot. TM. This rot severely affects his daily life, causing his flesh to rot away in his right arm and down to his mouth, causing him to produce a toxic gas which can be fatal to those around him, which is why he wears a gas mask. Very oddly considerate for him, and it leaves him overall very fatigued. Despite this, Subspace continues to be one of Blackrock's greatest scientists, or just in general, developing his own kind of energy crystals and inventing the biographs, which you might know, because we've talked about this before. They're essentially just the droids, but better. These biographs used for many duties throughout Black Rocks from maintenance bots to expendable foot soldiers. One in particular, however, the Gamma, helps him with daily tasks to compensate for his rot, but more on that later. Overall, Subspace is probably the worst of the current fighters, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is innocent. However, this guy will by far be the worst for a long time.
Vinestaff is the fourth support fighter to come out, and is also the second healer we have. Rather than having more direct healing like Medkit does though, she's all about regen healing and putting down as many plants as you can to really do so. Though she's not very mobile without them, so she's either the easiest thing to kill, or an issue if you've let her snowball enough. Onto lore and just everything else about her though. She has two moderately long horns that start from the side of her head and curl forward and upward, with each horn having 3 identical horns on the front of them. She wears a pink kimono that's decorated with flower patterns, an obi belt that's tied into a bow at her waist, and a headband with a hanamusubi knot tied on the right side. Her left arm is mostly made up of wood, which she got when she was unnaturally spawned in Thieves' Den. Vinestaff is the older sibling to Shuriken, who was also spawned after her because of her arm and was later banished from Darkage because of her arm, leaving her spending most of her life in the jungle, and would later figure out that she had an unexplained connection to the landscape of Thieves' Den. Shuriken, and later on Slingshot, who she also views as a sibling, would come visit her, and not long after, the three of them moved to Crossroads, where they're still currently living. She's very cautious of anyone that's in Darkage clan because of her past, but she still ultimately wants to connect to other Infernals and struggles because of her upbringing.
Coil is the last and newest support Inferno added to the roster, also being the youngest of them all. Coil was naturally spawned into Playground, picked up by a strange Inferno known as Wolf, who rescued him from the brink of death and raised him as her own, mentoring Coil and teaching him everything that he knows. Coil spawned with the Gravity Coil, but through experimentation, he was able to add 3 additional modes to his gear: a speed mode, a regeneration mode, and the highly dangerous fusion mode. Coil is an unserious person, as well as a known thief in the Crater Dust capital. Typically acts in his own best interest, he has broken into and stolen technology and energy crystals of the Core Block Administration, aka BlackRock. He typically gives some of these crystals out to the resident of Crater Dust, and takes the rest home to Wolf's abode to experiment with. Despite his devil may cry attitude, he's extremely intelligent, as evidenced with the experimentation on his own gear. And it's thanks to these crystals, namely the one lodged into his horn, that his strength and ability are boosted significantly, even able to enter fusion mode for extremely short periods of time on rare occasion. In the fusion mode, Coil is able to dish out extreme damage at the cost of expending a huge amount of energy, which knocks him out unconsciously short after entering the state. During the fusion mode, the right side of Coil's face is encapsulated in a layer of ice-like crystal, which quickly melts after he falls unconscious. This leaves his right eye leaking water for a short time afterwards. Coil is friends with Infernos such as Skateboard and Boombox, but he doesn't let anyone close and refuses to indulge in his past or others. He often teases and messes with other Infernos in order to get a reaction out of them, with his most memorable reaction being a regular visit to Thieves' Rest and Crossroads, where he loves to annoy the owner, Slingshot, the most. Despite loving the feeling of messing with others that comes with seeing the misery befall others, he would never seek harm to anyone himself.
Now that we have the fighters out of the way, let's move on to the NPCs that you'll see in Crossroads, or some other way in-game. The flip side is a duo consisting of Valk and Dom, who were mentioned earlier. They host the fights and festivals both in-game and in-universe, showing up to yap about one of the 3 map choices to fill the space while voting. If it wasn't obvious, these two were very much inspired by the Splatoon idols such as the Squid Sisters, Off the Hook, and Deep Cut. The flip side are biological brothers and the grandsons of Firebrand. They have a whole host of songs in-game, which you can probably hear in the background of this video. My personal favorite is Groovaholic. Valk is a positive, upbeat Infernal and usually exaggerates his speech to get a point across. His favorite faction is Playground. He regularly reads and gets flustered by fan mail, and can be a bit pushy despite being friendly. Valk is a stage name inspired by the Valkyrie helm hat on Roblox. His real name and gear is Microphone, which he always holds while on the news. Dom is a total 180. He's more reserved and soft-spoken, but has a sarcastic sense of humor. His favorite faction is BlackRock, and he likes poking fun at his brother's short stature. You'll notice he has an X over one of his eyes. That isn't makeup. The poor guy got one of his eyes and wings ripped off. We don't know why or by who at this moment, but it's theorized that caused Firebrand to go AWOL and, well, you know, burn down Lost Temple. Here's also one of their songs, The Flip Side, ironically named, which I'll use to point out what they sound like in their quote-unquote vocals in their songs.
Firebrand is the first deity on our list and is known to be the more kindest one of us all. He rules over Crossroads and is a bit of a peacemaker, as well as a big softie given he has some fascinations with the mortals. However, despite being the most beloved of the swords, there was a incident 10 years ago where he caused something to happen in the Lost Temple, known as the Scorch. While his motives were unknown, there was a general distrust in us swords because of it, and thus we were forbidden to ever interact with the mortals. With Firebrand now in hiding, Crossroads with no king, his grandchildren, Dom and Volk, otherwise known as Flipside, decided to take care of Crossroads in their stead.
Ice Dagger is in the box. As of writing this, the desk has said nothing about this motherfucker's rewrite, and it's starting to piss me off. In-game, Ice Dagger sometimes appears during the last minute of a round. Similar to Firebrand, large snowflakes will appear on the ground, and whoever gets caught in them will be hit for 10 damage and slowed down by 40% for about 3 seconds. As of writing this, he looks like this. Aww. His personality, or what little we have of it, is shown in-game to be very cheerful, childlike, and associated with Fightmas. The Inferno's Christmas, I believe, but that could be retconned.
Windforce is one of the 7 spots, and one of the tallest ones too. She's easily the most destructive deity out of them all, and does what she pleases, only really being kept in check by Firebrand. Despite all of that though, she is a wonderful parent to Banhammer. As of writing and before New Crossroads, she does not have a sword event in the game like Illumina, but is planned to later on.
Illumina is another one of the deities in the box, though not as much as Ice Dagger in my opinion. He doesn't have an event in-game as of writing this, and we don't know what kind of abilities he might have either, though the wiki states he's incredibly powerful and likes to mentally break his opponents and drive them off without even lifting a finger, finding much enjoyment in doing so. We also know that he hates Darkheart, which, let's be honest, we all do after Death in the Family. He also used to have both wings as seen in this arc by Soda, but it's unknown how he lost one of them. Personally, I believe it was a fight between him and Darkheart, but what do I know? Ghostwalker is up next on our list. In the last minute of a round, he has a chance to appear, and during his sword event, all players are granted 2 extra lives and will be instantly revived where they died, similar to Medkit's Revive. If the player still has lives left in overtime, they'll carry over, thankfully. In the lore, Ghostwalker seems to act as the Grim Reaper of swords. His sword is actually broken with a ghostly blade coming out of what's left of it. His wings also appear to be ghostly as they seem to vanish when not in use. He cannot feel regular emotions like the others, which leaves him neutral to most things and people, though the wiki states he's working with Illumina. He's also very flat yet formal in his speech. Ghostwalker created the Watchers such as Ghostery, Doomsakar, and more, which we'll get into later. He also doesn't have a mouth, which could be a strange spawned effect, but who knows, he could just be a ghost. Venomshank is probably the nicest deity you could ever meet, outside Firebrand of course, but he's, well, you know. In his sword event in-game, he'll summon zombies at each player's location, starting at 57 seconds left and every 15 seconds afterwards. The zombies will then chase the closest player and deals 10 damage each. In the lore, he's very stoic and very protective of Sword, but he still cares for him deeply. He's not usually one to start a fight, but will definitely finish one if he needs to. he can unfortunately go feral, acting animalistic and not fully conscious of its actions and behavior. And it's said his bite can turn a living infernal into a zombie. It's theorized that he first started wearing his iconic mask after he went feral over Windforce attacking Sword in the Death in the Family comic.
And now we've reached the best of the swords. Yes, Darkheart, we have come to play. Now, before you start writing in the comment sections about why we address ourselves with a plural manner, that is because we are two separate entities. We have the gear and the sword themselves. So don't ask that ridiculous question in the comment sections, because if you did, well, we know that you weren't listening, and thus you were considered a fool. Good, good. Now, we can go on to share a little bit about ourselves. We tend to fish. It's one of our favorite pastimes. We do it whenever we have the chance. However, that doesn't mean we aren't open with other opportunities that interest us. There was this soldier from Blackrock who became an ambassador as well. You may know them as Zuka, of course. They were really close with us swords, frankly speaking. They like working with us personally, seeing us as their friend, which was amusing to say the least. Believing that we were friends, what a joke! The reason why we stuck around with Zuka is because they interest us. Something related to more of a plaything in our opinion. Now, talking about relationships still, we swords, despite being siblings, don't necessarily get along with each other if needed be. Some of us play favorites, such as Firebrand and Windforce, despite those two having opposite opinions on the mortals. And there's us and Venomshank. We are close, to the point where we are always with each other. Ice Dagger, we haven't heard much about the little twink. But don't tell him that we said that. There is one thing that we do not like talking about. Illumina. We never get along. Never have, never will. Ghostwalker is a neutral party, but from what we heard, they're working with Illumina nowadays. Sellouts. We suppose that we could talk about a little more, but what else is there to talk about? We don't want to bore our audience now, would we? We know. What if we talk about Venomshank's son, the little canary, Sword? You see, we see a lot of things that interest us, and that little canary is one of them. There's so much potential behind those eyes, underneath that helmet, and yet Venomshank keeps them caged like a little canary they are. It's quite a disappointment. There could be greater things coming from them. But Venomshanks decided to off them out from the world. They wouldn't even know anything about what happened 10 years prior from the Scorch. Such a shame. What? Is that not enough lore about us? Not enough lore about the swords? Too bad. Can't spoil every secret, though we suppose we could share more about other things. However, it seems like our time is up. You big and greedy viewers always want to have more lore? Well, keep watching the video. Enjoy the viewership.
Ghostery is another one of the NPCs found in Crossroads already. When spoken to, she will tell the player their overall stats since starting the game for the first time, such as their played games, kills, deaths, assists, current win streak, current daily streak, their wins and losses, as well as a percentage of their win rate, and says she'll have more specific data in the future. There is actually a lore reason for how she knows so much as well. She is one of 7 Watchers being created by Ghostwalker to watch over the Inferno and document everything that happens in it. We'll get to the other Watchers later, but Ghostery specifically watches over Crossroads. She owns a library there that holds said knowledge, though how much she allows other Infernals to see is unknown, but I assume it isn't much. She's calm and usually pretty monotone, and even though she believes she shouldn't get involved with mortals, she is friends and shows genuine compassion for traffic and light blocks. Ghostery even has the supernatural ability to remember and recall any kind of knowledge she's ever had, even down to the exact second, a trait shared between all Watchers. Her design and the designs of the other Watchers are inspired by the pumpkin head accessory lines from the classic Roblox gallery. Her actual head is made out of fire, with the pumpkin being a mask. She keeps her true appearance hidden because it's considered unsightly to other infernals. The Watchers are the first and only other instance so far of another language being spoken in the Infernal. It's untranslatable from art that Soda's drawn because it's just random symbols with no actual meaning. But who knows, it could be translatable one day. She's capable of writing over 1 million words per second, and always carries a spare notebook for documenting purposes, just in case.
Oh, everything hurts. Fuck you, Darkheart. What are we on now? Traffic? Aw, hell yeah! Traffic is an infernal that lives in Crossroads that originated from Playground. They're rather laid back and very friendly, even having a good sense of humor now and then. They like to travel a lot, and they usually travel from every region a few times through various means of hitchhiking, and stays for about a week or so. Despite their travels, they actually have a good relationship with 2 individuals in particular, that being Lightbox and Ghostear. Ghostear and Traffic are actually close friends, with even her letting him sleep in her library. He tends to nap there sometimes when offered. Lightbox and Traffic are a bit of a different story. While the 2 are close friends as well, the lantern that was given to him was actually by her, and they tend to have more of a brotherly and sister relationship, with Traffic seeing them a bit of a little sister in his opinion. Mr. Bot is more or less a wannabe villain with him, usually tending to Traffic as a victim to their schemes, but they don't do any serious harm to him. So the chemistry between those 2 are Now, there is one relationship that is iffy, even more so compared to Mr. Bot. That's Moneybags, or to be honest, Pontius Moneybags III. As expected from a Nepo baby himself, he has a bit of a one-sided rivalry with Traffic. They heavily dislike him, but Traffic is, in his opinion, too high to figure it out. Despite this, he frequently allows to play cards with him, but he never really allows some, quote, peasant to get close to him. A bit of a defect, in his personal opinion. Despite this, Traffic is actually a pretty cool guy. In-game, he allows you to change your title menus if you can talk to him. In my personal opinion, Traffic is possibly the most laid-back and one of my favorites, in my opinion, Infernals that ever came out of fighting. No bias whatsoever.
The man, the myth, the absolute legend of a single Pringle father. And oh, so handsome guy in his prime, might I say. This is Rocket's father, Bizuka. He's one of the only NPCs you'll ever see in-game at the current moment, other than Flipside, Ghostear, and Traffic. He's the man that mains the truck, where you select whether you want to go to training servers and open or pro lobbies. In his current lore, he is a single dad working a workshop for gears and such, making modifications and selling parts for gears. In his older years, he had picked up Rocket and adopted him as his own kid. They've grown to have an interesting bond, with Zuka's stoic personality and Rocket's explosive one. Literally, explosive. Zuka can be a blunt and very don't care about nothing infernal. Despite this, he's surprisingly nice to the other vendors and crossroads that he works with, and he's got a big soft spot for his son, especially since they're both disabled in a way. In fact, he cares so much for his son that he doesn't even like the fact that he gets into fights, and discourages him from messing with pyrotechnics. He doesn't enjoy using his gear in older years due to his history with Blackrock and being a soldier for them. Speaking of being a soldier, Zuka, back in his early years, was a soldier for Blackrock, having been one of the best and was often looked up to by majority of the other trainees. He made the ranks quickly and rose to fame faster than you can say Pontius Moneybags III. He wielded a big rocket launcher back in his younger days. Some extra tidbits of info here. Zuka has an arm missing, to whom you may ask, well, an almighty deity is Thoth. Oh, what's that you say? You want to know which one? We have no idea. Crazy, right? I was crazy once. Anyways, Zuka, at some point, also had a relationship with Darkheart. The type of relationship it was is unclear, but the 2 were active, quote-unquote, friends back in Zuka's younger days, as shown in these art pieces made by Soda Kettle herself. Along with this, he had a work partnership relation with Broker as well, supplying him with things. They have an, odd relationship, and Zuka continues to work with him despite Rocket's hatred for this guy.
Lord Pontius Moneybags III, yes, that is their full name, is a very rich infernal who owns a shop in Crossroads, which, in-game, will have merch up for sale, both digital UGC and physical, probably makeshift plushies and such. Coming from a long line of rich Blackrockians, Pontius is very much a Nepo baby, hating poor infernals. Their family is known for making airships, like the Shooting Teapot Observatory, which is my favorite map. However, they apparently didn't bother raising mixed money bags here, leaving that up to a nanny and their custom-made biograph Carnage, who acts as a personal bodyguard more than anything. Pontius hates people like Broker, claiming there's only room for one corrupt capitalist. Traffic for obvious reasons, though he's too high off his gourd to notice, and surprisingly subspace, though it isn't said why. They're also a huge fan of Zuka, being a former Blackrock legend, and secretly a Flipside fanboy, at least according to Soda on one of our streams. Next, Broker is a silly little fellow who sells a currency called Broker Coins for 25 Robux each. These serve no other purpose at the moment except supporting the devs, so you should go buy as many as you can.
Buy.
Silliness aside, there's a lot of mystery surrounding Broker and his lore. He is fiercely devoted to the Church of the True Eye and works as an information broker and parts dealer. He was naturally spawned in Lost Temple, but has a strange biology, having a body that's been sewn and stitched together with skin of an unknown origin, including his head, which doesn't originally belong to him, having lost his original head to Banhammer, literally beheading him. Think about that for a second. How he survived that shit is unknown, but Brooker also doesn't have the ability to taste, bleed, or even feel, having no pain response or reaction to temperatures. It's also said that he has dark, wire-like material inside his body, which is also unknown at this time. He's highly valued by the church for his ability to gather large amounts of information thanks to his gear, which, you guessed it, also unknown. While he's loyal to the family, he doesn't like living in Lost Temple, so he's usually seen bumming around Zuka's place or wherever he can find. On the outside, Broker is overly happy and friendly to most people he meets, but under that mask, he's manipulative and only thinks about himself. He's not above violence and has a hatred for church heretics and bootlickers, ironic considering how loyal he is to the father. He puts all the money he gets towards the church and has a bad tendency to watch other infernals from their windows. When asked about any personal information, he always gives different answers each time, so those trying to find out about him are confused. Which, it's worked so far, so what are you gonna do?
I'm Broker.
Setting isn't really a character in the traditional sense. It's just a basic Roblox model with gears on the shirt what players can interact with to adjust their game settings. Who would have thought? However, Mixed Box will be replacing Setting in New Crossroads. They wear a cardboard box on their head with a smile drawn on it, green, cyan, and purple paint splatters, and 2 cardboard tubes coming from the head to mimic horns. They wear a gray open shirt with skull and bones pattern, and a cyan undershirt, as well as purple sweatpants and green slippers. Mixbox considers themselves to be a villain, though they never actually do any harm, just scaring poor and suspecting infernals with their gear, which they use to hack into electronics and machinery, including biographs. Bot has gotten spray paint and emo-styled infernal to tag along with them against their will. Bot also seems to like messing with traffic, specifically hacking into biographs to spook them.
Like Setting, Roger and Roger aren't actual characters in the game. These two exist solely for the fighters in-game to beat the shit out of them between rounds or in Zuka's warehouse. Roger is gray while Roger is cyan. That's it, I'm not sure what else you want.
Paint Bucket, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is another NPC planned to be added in New Crossroads. She'll allow the player to change their team colors and other color-related settings. Not much is known about her, but she's said to be very sassy and comes from Playground. She also sees Rainbow, I don't know, and spray paint like siblings, and likes to practice her makeup on them, even if they hate it. She's also Flipside's makeup artist and fashion designer, making their festival outfits. Not much is known about spray paint, but him and Graffiti are responsible for all the graffiti in Crossroads. He's also dragged around by Mixbot, unwillingly most of the time. He's also from Playground.
Speaking of Graffiti, he rivals with spray paint. These two are extremely good examples of similar gears existing at the same time, both being a form of spray paint can. He also wears a repurposed biograph helmet as a head, and is from Thieves' Den actually.
Speaking of Rainbow, he isn't planned to be an NPC as of right now, but he's still important. His gear is the Rainbow Magic Carpet, and he works as a mailman in Crossroads, being paid very well for being very fast at it, probably thanks to his gear. His big scarf, being his gear, acts like a pair of second arms. For example, when he crosses his arms when angry, the scarf would mimic him. His scarf also does allow him to fly. To what extent is unknown, but I think that's pretty cool. Now we'll be getting into more of the comic characters and other niche characters that aren't really in the game and probably won't be. We don't actually know why these characters exist, but they're cool nonetheless.
Grappling Hook is the leader of the Redcliffe Wranglers. They're very cheerful and always seem to keep the mood up in camp, but they can and will get down to business if needed. They're very skilled with their gear, as seen in the comic, and a skilled flyer on their vulture. They were also in a relationship with Scythe before the Scorch, and it is theorized they split because of their different beliefs afterwards, with Grappling Hook staying on his, Wranglers, and usually on the more Lost Temple side, and Scythe being, the way that she is.
Beehive, or as the Wranglers call her, Bee, is a more standoffish Infernal compared to the rest of the group. She's easily the most irritable out of the Wranglers and shows clear distaste towards the outsiders, getting angry when discussing the Church of the True Eye, but despite all of this, she's still nice to the other members of Redcliffe.
Chuck is the youngest of the Redcliffe Wranglers, and is the shortest as well. He acts tough to overcompensate for his short stature, but despite this, he holds large amount of respect for Grappling Hook and Beehive. An incredible sharpshooter too, Chuck can easily snipe a target, something he's known to do when the other Wranglers get on his nerves. Though behind his abrupt, tough nature, he quietly returns the affection of his group mates give him. It is also seen with his relationship with his bird, which he babies when no one looks.
Caltrip is another one of the Wranglers that shows up for a brief moment. He's stated to be studious and highly skilled, taking great pride in his gear, even if it's small. He can throw his gear very far and has great aim too. He's the type to follow orders to the T and takes his job very seriously, often getting frustrated when he's thrown off track. However, Cal is also very social. He loves outings with large groups and isn't afraid to tease his fellow Wranglers, though he doesn't trust outsiders easily. The wiki also states he has a minor lisp, likes to keep his sleeves rolled up, and is a father to a little Infernal named Cowbell. His vulture is also named Teddy.
TNT is by far the most reckless member of the Wranglers. He's very standoffish, suspicious of outsiders, and eager to make fun of them right off the bat. He is very loud, however, and friendly with people he knows, like the other Wranglers. He's closest with Tarantula due to them being both very silly, and is the only one he'll allow to call him nicknames.
Speaking of Tarantula, she is the oldest member of the Wranglers, at least in the immediate group we meet in the comic. She's the most friendly of the bunch as well, being a bit nervous around strangers, but ends up being very sociable and trusting to the point where the others sometimes have to remind her not to trust blindly. She's very playful and doesn't usually take things seriously, preferring to keep the mood up. She will gladly ramble forever if someone lets her as well. Before the Scorch, she used to raise animals for a living, and as a result is the one who takes care of the group's birds. Her gear is a pet tarantula that she always carries with her named Chipper. She'll even sometimes make little hats for it out of old fabric scraps.
Grav and Warp are two NPCs that are also in the box. We don't fully know a lot about them, even if they've been around for a while now. What we do know is that the two were co-workers with Medkit and Subspace. Grav, which is my personal favorite, actually has an artificial gear, being the Gravity Disruptor, though we don't currently know what her actual gear is, while Warp has the Telewarp gear.
Shotgun is another character in the comic. She's the landlord of the apartment Cobblehex Medkit lives in, and is especially interesting because she's the first character we can see interacting with her gear, desummoning it when talking to Sword and Rocket. The wiki says she's from Playground, but other than that, there isn't much info on her, despite being kind of brash and protective of her property. Father Overseer is the most mysterious Infernal so far. He's only seen in the comic, and the artists are doing a very good job at hiding his face creatively. He's the leader and creator of the Church of the True Eye. Not much else is known about him, but he claims to have spawned without a gear and welcomes anyone into the church, as long as they can show their devotion, of course. Remember Ghostery from earlier? Well, meet her deranged sister. Doomsakar, not to be confused with Duaskar, is definitely Doomskar and is no way Duaskar. She is also a Watcher. However, something caused her to deter from her purpose, causing Ghostwalker to lock her away. There is a boss fight against her in the game, and while it isn't canon, it is still a good look into her personality and abilities. Fun little fact, the mechanics of the fight were inspired by the Empress of Light from Terraria and the Overlord boss from Splatoon 3's Side Order, which, as a fan of both games, is really neat to me. She's very sadistic, and it's unsure what caused her to deter from her purpose, but whatever it was, has caused her to go kinda crazy. Doomskar, like the other Watchers, are a whole separate race from Infernals that were created by Ghostwalker. We know little to nothing about Doomskar herself, other than that she was one of the first Watchers Ghostwalker made, which would explain why she looks mostly like a pile of roots, and is stuck to one place in Ghostwalker's library, but instead of getting rid of her, is now a living collection of all known knowledge that's been collected. Doomskar was also the primary mentor for all the Watchers, and taught each of them how to write, speak, use their abilities, and memorize significant events in Infernal history. She's also the reason why Doomskar was only imprisoned, or quote-unquote grounded, rather than being killed. Speaking of the other Watchers, their names are Classic, Blizzaria, Eerie, and Darkseid. They're all sisters and have the same abilities to remember and recall knowledge as stated before with Ghostery. Doomskar used to watch over Playground, Blizzaria watches over Blackrock, Eerie and Darkseid watch over Lost Temple, one for Redcliffe and one for the Church, and Classic watches Thieves' Den. I want to say the Watchers have been around for at least 10 years, if not more, since everything in Lost Temple is pretty recent, but don't quote me on that.
Wolf was mentioned before, but who exactly is she? Well, let's turn to the wiki Thanks, Boyo. We can gather from some art, however, that she's very cold and seemingly only took Coil in for selfish reasons, or her teaching methods are just weird. What is interesting, though, is Wolf is the first case of a shape-shifting gear. Until this, revealed in a stream one time that all gears were either an object or animal companion that could be summoned. However, Wolf's gear is the first one, and so far the only one, that allows her to transform into a giant wolf. Who would have guessed? In fact, we haven't even seen her humanoid form yet, only sketches and silhouettes of her wolf form. Hopefully we can learn more about her in the future, but who knows, we'll have to see.
TV is a journalist for the flip side who's obsessed with TVs, if you couldn't tell by his name. He's very invasive with his work, knowing information he probably shouldn't and getting into trouble with people he's interviewing. His gear is based on the geolocator gear and can pause time for a few seconds, which is how he's able to get so much info. Despite this, he's still very polite in his speaking, and it just wants to do a good job.
Sparkles. Sparkles is a silly side character that doesn't have much game relevance, but still has a ton of fans, like me. She's most likely the leader of the circus troupe, and her gear is a giant sparkler. She's the only instance right now of Vertilago in the cast of Infernals.
Uni is another silly side character that is a drag performer in Sparkle's Circus. She's also a fashion designer, and her gear is the unicorn, which I'm sure she rides in her acts, and whose name is Cupcake. Umbrella is a strange infernal who was spawned in Playground and seemingly picked up by Firebrand and became his advisor. They're a bit picky and fussy, hating to get dirty in any way, but they mean well. Umbrella also acts as a foster parent to Valk and Dom after Firebrand went AWOL.
Voidstar is another niche character that doesn't have a lot about her. She's in prison in Bandlands at the moment, is completely animalistic, feral, and even cannibalistic. She can't see due to her horn mutation causing her horns to grow over her eyes, but can hear and smell extremely well. Due to her animalistic nature, she cannot talk and is just kinda like Banhammer's weird pet that he never agreed to have. It's weird, man, I don't know. Why she's here and what she'll do in game, if anything, is unknown at this time, but hey, feral infernals can exist, I suppose.
Dollmaker is a strange infernal who suffered greatly in the Scorch. She's covered in bandages from all the burns she experienced and can't talk because of them. As her name implies, Dollmaker creates dolls of other infernals, typically when they're about to die or upon request. She has 4 needles in her bag, which are both sewing needles and acupuncture needles. She uses a different one depending on the doll she's making, which represent different things. The first one is for good fortune and health, the second is bad luck and danger. The third is rebirth and spirit, which to hers means the spirits of the dead will possess the doll and speak through it. And the fourth is death and decay, which usually means the owner of the doll will die shortly after the creation of it. It's unsure why she does this, but it seems that she gets almost possessed when starting to make one that isn't requested.
There are currently 6 models of Biograph shown to the public, and we'll go into each model in detail. Zeta. Biograph model Zeta are the main types of mass-produced biographs and serves as foot soldiers with Blackrock. They are extremely objective-oriented, routinely despairing themselves if they fail a task, and struggle to understand anything that is not explicitly pre-programmed into them, such as referring to Subspace as creator, a hatred for Medkit, working relationship with Hyperlaser, or having Coil's crystal criminal record. They have the capabilities to learn new concepts and supposedly been made of artificial flesh, but knowing if that's true to other biographs is unknown. Beta. Biograph model Beta are considered tanks of Blackrock's army, manufactured with heavy defense and offensive capabilities. Can be bought as a cosmetic for Zeta Biograph for 50k bucks. Chi. Biograph model Chi is the smallest biograph known to the public. Revealed during Subspace Valentine's event, their purpose is for maintenance and access cramped spaces that normal Infernals can't reach. Side note, they're not intended for entertainment purposes, as they're a more recent invention than the Zeta model. Espelin. This is the only biograph model that does not have the image present. Biograph model Espelin can be bought by the general public. That's mostly used for commercial use, such as serving in restaurants. Omega. Biograph model Omega is a unique type of biographs produced as soldiers or bodyguards for noble and other elites of Blackrock. Subspace Team Mind has modeled them around the Warner Banland, Banhammer, with one currently known to the public being Carnage. They have a more capable AI than other biographs, but not much else is known about the Omega biographs. Gamma. Biograph model Gamma is the most unique type of biograph in Vikings lore. It's the latest model shown to the public with only one in existence, meant for Subspace personal suit, assistance, and daily reminder to take medication. Gamma's AI is the most advanced out of any model, but is not sentient, while being friendly around towards Subspace co-workers and other Infernals. Gamma is also a suit for Subspace, turning pink when Subspace is in control. This often protects Subspace from danger while keeping Subspace sterilized from the rot effects to further prevent its progression. When it's controlled, it enhances precision, making it useful for experiments. Carnage. Carnage is a heavily armored Omega biograph modeled specifically for Pernicious Moneybags III, as was mentioned before. Despite being an AI and not sentient, it's shown to be a bit witty and sassy at times toward its owner. It was custom made for Pernicious Moneybags III to be a bodyguard, and they even named it. It's different from other Omegagraphs, and is programmed to be more reasonable and logical than just a killing machine. Also, apparently, if you were to show a TikTok, it's circuit with fries, so how to kill a biograph 101! Thumbs up!
I'd say overall the world of the Inferno is very impressive and well maintained over the years. I don't know about you guys, but the rest of us are very, very excited for the new Crossroads update. Hopefully this video is out before then, but we'll see. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the flip side.